Good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to another Webinar Wednesday hosted by the CSU Bakersfield Small Business Development Center. Good afternoon, I'm Kelly Bearden. This is Managing Your Small Business Beyond the Pandemic, number 107 consecutive weeks of live webinars that are presented every Wednesday at 1 o'clock, 12 to 1. And hosted by a lot of individuals that we'll talk about in a little bit. But we got a great program for you. There's a great guest speaker talking about the CalSavers program. So let's actually start the webinar. And so what is happening today, March 30th, 2022? Well, we're going to talk a little bit today, a topic we haven't talked about, but it's starting to move on and roll right along. And that is the State Small Business Credit Initiative. And that is going to be jointly out of two offices out of the Capitol. It's going to be out of GoBiz and also out of the Treasurer's office. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the things that are happening there. We'll talk about the California Dream Fund, which is out of the office of the Small Business Advocate of GoBiz. And we are one of the recipients in our Central California region. And we are looking to actually work with people and start businesses, train them, cancel them, help them write business plan, and then have them apply to industry for hopefully some funding of the $5,000 to $10,000 per business that's available. The Kern Micro Grant Program moves on, and this is a state funding initiative that is actually a micro grant of $2,500. We'll talk a little bit about that today. And our special guest today will bring in, and he's going to let you know all about CalSavers. And CalSavers, the new initiative, the new program out of the Treasury Department, which is a retirement program, and all the details. An important thing to know is July 1st for those of you that have 5 or more employees. Offer a big welcome today to the Kern County Black Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Nick Hill, the president. Last year, we were doing a lot of chamber-related webinars that were separate from Webinar Wednesday. And we found we were doing too many webinars and there was too much other work to be doing with our clients and other stuff. And so it kind of fell to the back burner like some things do. So what we hope to do now is to bring back on the last Wednesday some of our local chambers of commerce and bring them in as a sponsor, a co-sponsor of Webinar Wednesday today. And today hopefully we have multiple chamber executives and chambers that on this particular thing, but it's evolving as it goes. And I'm a little slow on the bandwagon and getting people jumped on it. So, but a big thanks. And we'll bring Nick in during the question and answer section. We're going to talk also today just slightly about some of the idle changes to the popular SBA loan program that is open. That'd be interesting if SBDC had a loan program, but the SBA loan program, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, talk about an update on some of the other pandemic relief. We'll take your questions at the end today. And as the usual, we have a poll. And so today's poll question actually comes from a website that many of you might think I frequent quite often. It is fool.com, and fool.com had some retirement saving questions. So just kind of the pop quiz version of the poll today is going to be on retirement savings, since that is the focus of today's presentation and today's Webinar Wednesday. So let's launch the first poll question, which is in 2019. The average retirement savings for the average American household was $15,000, $65,000, or $130,000. So you get the pop quiz, the average retirement savings for American households. So with the average, you get some people that have a lot, you have some people that have none, it all averages out, it's not a mean. But in 2019, one of these three amounts is the average retirement savings for an American household. Again, 15,000, or is it 65,000 or $130,000? So we have about 78% of you that have already jumped in. Thank you. Thank you for participating. And thank you for getting such a good response. So what we'll do is we will end the poll and share the results with you. And 53% of you think it's $15,000. Well, I got good news for you. The good news is the answer is the next one, 65,000 with 42% of you. So not quite as bleak, but still a long ways from attaining a balance of savings that really make for a comfortable retirement. So definitely, I hope I'm not stealing the thunder of our guest speaker who was going to talk about this. I have not seen his presentation, but that's it. That's the average according to Fool. Now, the next question is somewhat related and from the same site, and we'll credit them accordingly. And this is going to be the percentage of Americans who are afraid they might not be able to retire because of COVID-19 financial setbacks. So is it 13%, 26%, or 40% of Americans feel that they are afraid they might not be able to retire because of COVID-19 setbacks? So you get a choice between 13% of Americans, 26%, or 40% of Americans that actually are afraid they might not be able to retire. So we have 73% of you in, and participation is great today. We'll give you one last shot to get in. Again, the number of Americans who are afraid they might not be able to retire when they had planned because of COVID-19 financial setbacks. And we will end the poll and share the results with you, and you will see that you are correct. Unfortunately, it's 40% of Americans who are afraid they might not be able to retire because of the COVID-19 setbacks. 33% of you thought it might have been 26. I wished it was. And even wished it was 13%, of which 22% of you thought was the correct response. So thank you for participating, and thank you for actually participating in all of our polls today. Okay, so let's move along. The California Dream Fund, as we kind of go through this status and action of the key pandemic relief that's still open, we'll have, and we're including the California Dream Fund, although it's for new startups that are actually starting after the pandemic. And if you're interested in this program, please send something to our lead center within the Central California region at CASBDC, obviously acronyms for California Small Business Development Center, CASBDC at ucmerced.edu. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about the Kern County Micro Grant Program. Says funding in late March. I'm being the optimist. I don't think it's going to really happen tomorrow, but it's coming really soon as the first lot of checks are going to be funded. The money has arrived from the state of California and Kern County, and we're going to be rolling this out. Got a lot of approvals in the queue and a lot more that are happening right as we speak. The Mono County Grant and Forgivable Loan Program is open. You would want to contact in Mono County Jeff Simpson, the Economic Development Manager, or their consultant, Jeff Lucas. The EIDL loan is closed. EIDL is closed. However, there's still a number of changes that you can still do if you have an existing EIDL loan. So if you have an economic injury disaster loan, you can still request more funds. You can still request if you were denied reconsideration. So there's still a lot of options. And also recently, in the last few weeks, it changed to include a 30-month deferment. So now, from the date that you got that particular EIDL loan, you can go out 2.5 years before you have to make your first payment. We're still actually seeing the California Relief Grant Program, which is kind of the sister program of the Micro Grant Program that we're doing in Kern County, that is state funds. So those two are related. You can't have both. If you already have the California Relief Grant, you cannot apply for Kern County Micro Grant Program and be expecting to receive those funds. So this one though, Lindustry.com is still contacting. We heard from Maureen 2 weeks ago with one of her clients that just recently, the day before, I believe, got funded. So there's still money that they are getting out in the last cycles of that particular program. The State Small Business Credit Initiative. This is money that comes from ARPA, from the last round of stimulus. It's a $10 billion national program, of which 1.18 billion is coming to California. We'll talk a little bit about that momentarily. The Employee Retention Credit is still technically open for periods up to the third quarter of 2021. City of Bakersfield, their Restart to Loan to Grant program was open last time I checked, and you can contact Access Plus Capital for more information. PPP forgiveness, if you haven't gone through that process, you're going to want to. Well, we're still running into individuals who are not completely done. Remember, the PPP program, the Paycheck Protection Program, many people refer to it as a grant. It is a loan until that amount is forgiven. So if you haven't quite done that, it's not too late, even though you might have started to make payments on that. And the restaurant program wasn't in the last particular bill, so off it goes. Moving on, the state small business, we know a little bit more what's going on here. Out of the Office of the Treasurer at State of California, the 1.8 billion is going in 3 tranches. You could probably tell I cut and pasted this, since I seldom use or probably even know what the word tranches is. But anyway, it is going being split between the treasurer and also the iBank. And there are some programs. Here's the California Main Capital, that you can see the amounts of money that they have that are going to be going out in these programs. We'll get more clarification and hope to have someone come on from the treasurer's office later this spring and talk about where these are going to line up. So as you can see at the very bottom, that they are required to actually have this separate application that's due tomorrow. So we're still probably just a little bit, we're getting more information about how this funding is breaking out in particular areas. Again, in $1.18 billion that's going to be going in loans and maybe some venture capital type projects in California. So we talked a little about the Dream Fund, and again, if you're interested in that, the Dream Fund is $35 million statewide to seed entrepreneurships and small business creation in underserved communities and underserved members of those communities. Training, business plan, and consulting to be considered for the $5,000 to $10,000 of new grants that go out. Again, there is your email address that you need to do to get the program started for you. Again, the lead office is doing that. So there's a few different components of it. One of them is going to be, there's going to be a business plan that's going to be required. We went through the details of that last time, and next time we will probably go into some of the details when time permits. The Kern County Small Business Micro Grant Program comes out of the Office of the Small Business Advocate for GoBiz. And essentially what that is providing 58 counties the first opportunity to administer them. Kern County was one of the first to jump on board with about 1.1 million for our smallest, neediest, and most vulnerable micro enterprises and small businesses. Remember, there are some eligibility issues on the form. I'm not going to go over the form today because of time, but do please remember, we are getting a lot of applications that are individuals who have already received the COVID-19 California Relief Grant Program administered by Lindustry. So please remember, you're probably not going to, it's being checked by multiple sources that you're not going to probably evade that. So if you have received that funding, please, let's talk about other areas to where maybe we can find funding, and maybe it's with some of these other programs that are coming. So our role at the SBDC, at the CSU Bakersfield SBDC, is to assist you, help you package the information, but we also want to offer our free one-on-one consulting so that you can look at the bigger picture for your micro business and maybe look at ways of growing your business or maybe making it even just a little more profitable. So you can call our office at 661-654-2856 for more information. The EIDL program, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, had the changes. We talked about the 30 months deferment. There are other programs, other issues that have come up is that, here's really, let me skip this slide and go to the next one. This one's kind of I think a big one, because you can still make payments if you want to against your EIDL if you have an economic injury disaster loan, because interest does accrue at 3.75%. I don't know if you're ever going to see a loan at 3.75% again, but it is available to small businesses, which are very difficult, 3.75%. And you might want to make payments on it. You might not. You don't have to because of the deferment. Also, what this could mean is that your particular loan might result in a balloon payment. So you have a 30-year loan term. The first 2.5 years now have been deferred. Deferred doesn't mean that they are picking up the bill and they're forgetting about it. They're adding it to the end of the loan. So at that point, if you pay it off in 30 years and you have a problem, come back and call me. I'm sure I'll be around. After the deferment period ends, COVID, borrowers are going to be required to make regular principal and interest payments beginning 30 months at the end of that note. So also you can actually, again, you can go in and you can start making payments if you'd like. And that's all I got for today. And now it's time to introduce our guest speaker today. And our guest speaker is Jonathan Herrera. And Jonathan is the Director of Outreach and Education for CalSavers. I believe he's also on the board, the CalSavers board. That is the state's pioneering retirement savings program, which is a path to retirement security for over 7 million Californians who lack a retirement saving plan at work. Jonathan has over 20 years of experience working in personal small business and government finance, which actually is pretty good credentials to go into this program. He has spent 3 years in the Treasurer's office and actually did this presentation for us on Webinar Wednesday about 3 years ago in 2019, when the program was kind of very new then and had less actual requirements. So Jonathan spent a number of years in the corporate banking world. He's done a lot of business development, outreach strategies, teams for individuals, families, and small businesses. He is a graduate from our CSU system, being our sister campus of Sacramento. Jonathan, great to have you joining us again. Thank you. Welcome back and take it away.
Thank you so much, Kelly, for that introduction. And while I take over the screen share here, let me start by saying thank you so much for allowing me to join you guys today. I'm really thankful for the partnership that we've had with the Bakersfield SBDC, in particular, as you said, inviting us on multiple occasions now to join you guys for these webinars. Really excited for the opportunity to join you this afternoon to talk about how California is working to address this retirement savings access gap that, Kelly gave us great introduction to at the beginning. And yes, of course, we're going to discuss the state's new retirement mandate and why this is an important compliance issue for, you and your peers, fellow business owners, to be aware of. So as Kelly said, CalSavers is the state's new retirement savings program for the millions of Californians who don't have a way to save for retirement at their job. And as he alluded, it was actually created by legislation that passed back in 2016 that actually requires California employers who do not sponsor a retirement plan, if they have 5 or more employees, to participate in CalSavers, which we've designed as an automatic enrollment individual retirement account with no employer fees or fiduciary responsibility. We'll get into that in much more detail in just a moment, but before, I just want to say that I think that this is a really important conversation to be having right now for a couple of reasons, especially in the context of managing a small business beyond the pandemic. First of all, is this job market that we're all up against. We're hearing from employers all over the state about how hard it is to fill open positions right now, and employers are looking for ways to make their business look more attractive to prospective employees and retain their existing staff, right? But some businesses, especially small businesses, haven't been able to compete in the past on retirement benefits because they don't have the resources, whether that's staff or financial, to sponsor their own plan. And that's why, one of the reasons why CalSavers was created and designed with no employer fees, in order to level that playing field for small businesses. And then the other thing, which Kelly alluded to so well in his introduction, is, with so many people working to overcome the financial setbacks caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, more and more employers are looking to focus their efforts on helping their employees improve their financial wellness and save for the future. And I think that, we see now more than ever how vital it is for all of us to have financial resiliency in the short and long term. And CalSavers was designed, to help workers on both of those measures. So I know I'm limited on time. I'm going to get off the soapbox and go into the details now. I wanted to start by giving you a little bit of background on the CalSavers program. We'll focus mostly on how it affects employers because, I recognize my audience, but I do want to talk a little bit about what it means for employees and workers throughout the state having the opportunity to save. And then most importantly, I'll share some resources on how you can keep in touch with the program and get the assistance that you need if you're one of those businesses that needs to facilitate the program. So again, I think the best place to start is by talking about the situation that exists in the state that the legislature was trying to address when they passed the bill that created the CalSavers program. And what it comes down to is nearly half of Californians are projected to retire into economic hardship if they can retire at all. And we think that a key driver of that fact is that there's millions of Californians who are going to work every day, playing by the rules, but lack access to a workplace-based retirement program. And that's particularly important because the research shows that workers are 15 times more likely to be saving and be on a path towards retirement security if they have access to a simple payroll deduction savings program at work, just a way to, save automatically from the paycheck, set it and forget it, building a nest egg for their future by making small deposits directly from their paycheck over time. That number actually goes up to 20 times more likely if the program features automatic enrollment, which we're proud to say CalSavers does, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in just a second too. But knowing that the best way to get folks saving and on a path towards retirement security is through the workplace, the state of California did create this new law, which, as I mentioned before, basically says that any business in the state of California that is not offering an employer-sponsored retirement plan, if they have 5 or more employees, will need to register for CalSavers and facilitate their employees' access to the program. So what that means in real life is businesses who already have a qualified retirement plan in place will be exempt from the mandate. And businesses had some time to, go out and find a qualified, employer-sponsored retirement plan from the market. But for everyone else, we wanted to create CalSavers as a really simple plug-and-play, fee-free solution for employers to be able to satisfy this mandate. I should mention that we measure the number of employees that a business has by looking at the quarterly wage reports that the businesses are filing with EDD. So we look at the 4 quarterly DE9 filings that you made with EDD for the previous calendar year, and we average that number out. So, what we are talking about is not necessarily a point in time count of your employees, but the average number of employees that you reported to EDD during the previous calendar year. So hopefully that makes it a little bit easier for those employers that might be up and down around that 5. As long as the average number from the previous calendar year stays at 5 or more, you'll remain eligible for the program. And then we reassess eligibility every year in April when we get fresh data from EDD. But when it comes to employee participation, we're looking at all of your California W-2 employees. If they're 18 years or older and have a Social Security number or an ITIN, they count towards your number of employees to determine your eligibility for the program. But they also would then need to be included in your roster of eligible employees. So you'll notice we're not talking about full-time employees. This count includes all of your employees, whether they're full-time, part-time, seasonal, even folks who might be here on a visa are eligible for the program if they're receiving W-2 income from your business and are 18 years or older. We also like to say up front that we don't see ourselves as intended to replace or compete with employer-sponsored plans. As I mentioned, the goal of this legislation is to address this access gap that exists in the state. So we're already starting to see evidence of employers going out and starting their own retirement plans, and that's great. It's still a win for the legislation because it means that more workers throughout the state of California are getting access to these tools that we know work to get them saving on a path towards retirement security. So we do have a list of qualified retirement plans available on our website. If you go to the frequently asked questions, which is it's called the Help Center on our website, calsavers.com, one of the very first questions there under the employer tab is this list of qualifying retirement programs that folks can use. If you have any one of these in place, you'll be exempt from the mandate. Everyone, I'll give Kelly a copy of these slides too, so hopefully he can distribute them to all of you who are here today. But let's talk about those registration deadlines. So right now we're about 2/3 of the way chronologically through the rollout of this program. We launched it back in July of 2019, and when we did that, it kicked off a 3-year phased rollout of compliance deadlines based on the size of business. Businesses with more than 100 employees were supposed to register by September 30th of 2020, and businesses with more than 50 employees were supposed to register by June 30th of 2021. But this next deadline is the big one. Businesses with 5 or more employees will have until June 30th, 2022 to register for the program. And remember, we're talking about the average number of employees that you reported to EDD for the previous calendar year. If you are wondering if we see your business as eligible, again, I'm going to have some contact information available up at the end of the presentation, and we can look up your particular business and see if we have you down as eligible and required to sign up for the program. Most likely, if you're receiving communications from us, invitations to register for the program, then we do have you on that list. Just a quick note for businesses with less than 5 employees. Again, we're talking about the average number of employees that reported to EDD for the previous calendar year. But businesses with less than 5 employees are not subject to the mandate and actually can't register as an employer for the CalSavers program. But we did open the program for individual participation. So employees of businesses that aren't eligible, or if you yourself are a business owner with a small business, a sole proprietor, contractor, gig worker, you can actually go to calsavers.com and start your own IRA with CalSavers anytime you'd like. So even though the business isn't eligible, any individual who wants to start an IRA with us can do so at any time. Just looking at the situation locally, the number of businesses that we've determined to be eligible in the sort of territory of the Bakersfield SBDC, just looking at the Kern, Inyo, Mono counties, we're looking at more than 4,100 eligible employers throughout those 3 counties, which represent more than 133,000 employees. So potentially big impact for those, for both employers and workers in your region, which is again why we're so excited to be here today to share this information with you guys. So if I just had to sum up 3 key takeaways for this presentation that I'm hoping that everybody walks away with, I would say these are the 4 things. Again, we're going to get into more detail on some of the specifics, but just key takeaways going into the rest of the presentation. I like to list out these 4 primary features. Number 1 is this employer requirement. Probably the key takeaway for this presentation is that all California employers with 5 or more employees must register for CalSavers and facilitate their employees access if they don't offer a qualified retirement plan. Primary feature number 2, as I hinted at earlier, and I'll talk about in more detail in just a little bit, we did design the program as automatic enrollment for employees. So, participation is completely voluntary for employees. They'll have the option to opt out if they don't want to participate, but it is important to note that folks will get automatically enrolled if they're working for an eligible employer or a participating employer, I should say, and they don't opt out within their 30-day employee decision period. They can opt out at any time after that, and we'll talk about that in more detail in just a minute, but I think it's just a really important thing to note up front. Third thing, and I think that this is just kind of a neat feature of the program, is that it's developed as a public-private partnership. So I think that it's important for folks to know that this program is professionally managed and advised by financial service companies. So we've contracted with a private sector financial firm to run the day-to-day operations and the record keeping of the program. If you call the call center, you're calling that company, and we have professional financial managers managing the investment. So folks are concerned who might be concerned about the state creating a big bureaucracy around this, or folks who might be concerned about the state controlling or handling the money should rest assured that none of that is true. The program is again managed and advised by these financial service companies. So that means that you get the expertise of these firms, but with state oversight by a transparent public board chaired by the state treasurer. I'm not a member of the board, by the way, but I do work for it. The board is chaired, though, by the state treasurer, which is why we're based out of the state treasurer's office. Fourth thing to note, which again is another neat feature of the program, is that we're building this program at zero cost to the state and the taxpayer. And again, I've already mentioned this, the employer. So we are operating right now on a small startup loan that we got from the general fund, which we're required to pay back with interest once the program is up and running. But once the program is up and running and fully rolled out, it's going to be self-sustaining based on the small fee that we charge the participants, so the savers, your employees in the program. And we'll talk about that in more detail in just a minute. All right, so that sort of gets us through the introduction. And I think the next most important thing to talk about is how this program affects employers and what employers are going to need to do to, facilitate the program, which is kind of a nice way of saying staying in compliance if they end up registering for CalSavers, as opposed to offering a qualified retirement plan of their own. But I think the best place to start is to sort of talk about what we had in mind or what our goals were in how we designed the program. One of the first things we did when the bill passed back in 2016 was get together a group of stakeholders, representing both, the labor community, general consumers, but also, the employer community. And what we wanted to know from the employer community and small business owners in particular was what was it about retirement programs on the existing market that made it difficult for employers to offer retirement savings options to their employees. And over again, we hear the same three hurdles reported. It's the administrative burden, right? All the work that it takes to find an advisor, choose investments, choose a plan, choose a record keeper, all of that kind of stuff. And then the ongoing requirements, right? Reporting to the IRS annually and all that good stuff. There's the fees, of course, to offer a qualified plan. Oftentimes there's startup fees, there's ongoing fees that the employers have to take on in addition to the fees that are charged to their employees. And then, of course, there's that fiduciary responsibility. So, if an employer is sponsoring their own retirement plan, they're responsible for monitoring the fees and the investments. And if something goes wrong, they could be potentially held liable for that. So we tried to create the CalSavers program to address all three of those issues. So we've tried to make it as easy as possible for employers to facilitate. Hopefully you'll see some evidence of that as we go through, what that looks like. Again, there are no fees for employers to facilitate the program. The only cost for employers is going to be the little bit of administrative time that it takes to sort of bake the CalSavers process into your existing payroll process, which, the feedback from the vast majority of employers who have already signed up and are facilitating the program is that it's really easy. In fact, I think the best piece of feedback that we tend to get on a regular basis is that it's a whole lot easier than folks thought it was going to be, which, obviously is good news for us. And then, of course, lastly, employers are not, because you as the employer are not sponsoring this program, you're not taking on that fiduciary responsibility that you would as a plan sponsor. So that responsibility falls on the board that I work for, our small staff here at the State Treasurer's Office, and then, of course, all of the relevant contractors like the companies that I mentioned that we've contracted with to manage the program, and the investments, and of course, the advisors that we've contracted to help us monitor the fees and the investments and do all that kind of stuff. So, it's our responsibility to make sure that the program's operating in the best interest of the saver, of your employees. So let's talk a little bit about what those employer responsibilities are. It all starts off with really two sort of one-time responsibilities, and that is you register by your state required deadline and you take a few minutes to set up your account. Feedback from employers is this process takes, less than 15 minutes. But basically you go online, you set up a username and password, and you tell us a little bit about your business, right? Who is going to be sort of the responsible person that's going to work with us on a regular basis. Tell us a little bit about how you do your payroll and how often you do your payroll so that we can help you get that part set up. The next thing that employers are going to be required to do is give us a roster of their eligible employees. And this is sort of the key to that automatic enrollment feature. So employers are required to give us a list, again, of all of their eligible employees so that any employee with California W-2 income who is 18 years or older, regardless of how many hours they work, so part-time, full-time, seasonal, all of those employees will be included in your roster. And then after that employee decision period is up and we know which of your employees are participating, employers will just need to submit those contributions for those participating employees as part of their existing payroll process for each pay period. And that's sort of the only two ongoing requirements for employers who are facilitating the program. You're going to continue to maintain that roster of eligible employees. So as you hire new employees, you'll add them to your list. If employees leave, then you can mark them as inactive on your roster to, keep it up to date, keep it clean for you. And then you'll continue to submit employee contributions again as part of your existing payroll process. And we can help you work with your payroll provider to see, what level of service you can expect from them or what they might be able to do to help you out with that. Couple of things that I like to mention that employers will not experience. Again, employers will not incur any program fees. Employers do not have any fiduciary responsibility, and employers are not allowed to make a contribution into the program. So one of the questions that we frequently get is, am I going to be required to make a company match or to make, employer contributions into employee accounts? The answer is no, because it's designed around an IRA. But let's see, couple of things employers will not do or should not do. Employers should not be encouraging or discouraging participation in the program. We think employers play an important role in helping employees understand that this is coming and what their, how they can make changes to the account and stuff like that, but they should remain relatively neutral about whether or not the employee should participate. Of course, employers will not be providing advice about investment options, taxes, or participation in the program. That's table stakes, right? You wouldn't want to do that, even if you were sponsoring your own plan. And then, of course, employers, like I said, don't manage investment options, won't have to process distribution or manage any of the changes that employees will make as they're working with the program. So anytime an employee needs to make a change, rather than knocking on your door or coming to your desk while you're trying to run your business, they can communicate directly with the program. We'll process any changes that they need to make. And then if any of those changes affect payroll, we'll communicate those to you as the employer or to your designee who's doing payroll for your business. So that they can incorporate those changes into the payroll process. Let's see. So just to take those responsibilities and lay them out on a timeline so that you get a sense of what the timing is on this. As I mentioned, we've been sending invitations to register out to all of the businesses that we have identified as eligible, which basically means we see that you have 5 or more employees based on that data that we're getting from EDD, and that we couldn't find evidence that you already have a plan in place. So once you have that invitation, you are welcome to register at any time before the deadline. In order to register, you just need your EIN and your CalSavers access code, which will be included in that invitation. If you don't have your invitation or haven't seen it and you feel like you should be on this list, right? You have 5 or more employees and you don't have a retirement plan, feel free to reach out to us and we'll help you look it up. But once you do register for CalSavers, the regulations say that you have 30 days to set up your account and upload your roster. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind if you're thinking about registering early. Once you register, you've got 30 days to get that roster uploaded. Once you upload that roster, that action kicks off a 30-day employee decision period, and we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail in just a second, where basically, your employees will reach out to your employees to help them, invite them to check out the program, let them know that they need to opt out if they don't want to participate. So employers in that case are sort of in a waiting period, waiting to see which of their employees are participating. This is a good time, though, for employers to reach out to their payroll company to see, what level of service their payroll company is willing to offer to help them facilitate this. We've seen different levels of integration and different levels of service from different payroll providers. But either way, our employer service team is standing by ready to help employers get the payroll set up. But once that employee decision period is up, we'll enroll any of your employees that don't opt out into the program, and you can start initiating those payroll deductions as part of your existing payroll process. Usually we're looking at the first or second pay period after that 30-day employee decision period is up for employers to start making those contributions. So that lays out, the employer responsibilities. I can see that we're starting to run out of time, so I'll just go really quickly through, the employee features. Again, you'll get a copy of these slides, and we invite you guys to connect with us later if you want more information or more details on the saver aspect of this. But, as I mentioned, we built the program around an IRA. So it's an automatic payroll deduction IRA, which means the contributions are deducted directly from their paycheck and then sent to the program to be deposited into an IRA account that's in your employee's name and the employee owns and controls. It is completely voluntary. I mentioned the automatic enrollment feature, but savers can opt out or opt back in at any time. Just like we wanted to create a simple program for employers, our goal is the same for employees, just recognizing that a lot of folks, this might be their first, opportunity to have a retirement plan and an investment account. We wanted to keep the options relatively simple. That starts with automatic enrollment. So folks who do nothing can just, set it and forget it and be on a path towards retirement security. But people who want to engage with us and customize their accounts can do so. I've got a slide with the different customizations available. Portability is a really important saver feature here. Because these accounts are not tied to you as the employer, they will follow your employees wherever they go. If they end up at another CalSavers participating employer, they can make contributions into their existing account from their new employer. We've also seen about 35% of our current participants are contributing from multiple employers. So this is also great for folks who are working multiple jobs to make ends meet. They can save from both employers into one account. And then, of course, I mentioned that, the program is going to be self-sustaining based on the small fee that we charge the participants. So savers do pay a small fee to cover the program administration costs. If we were to look at that same timeline that I shared earlier from the employer's perspective, from the employee's perspective, this is what it would look like. Again, it all starts when you as the employer upload that roster of eligible employees into the CalSavers portal. When that happens, we start communicating to your employees to let them know that the program's here, and it kicks off that 30-day employee decision period. After 30 days, your employees are automatically enrolled in the program, and you as the employer can start initiating the payroll contributions. But during that 30-day employee decision period, your employees can really have three options, right? Number one is they do nothing, in which case they get automatically enrolled at the default settings. Number two is they can, come to our website or call our dedicated saver line and customize their account. Option number three is they opt out. And we've even tried to make that as simple as possible. Folks can opt out online, folks can opt out over the phone. The welcome kit that we send folks also includes an opt-out form that people can fill out, mail back. So and then we send a few communications to each employee before they get enrolled in the program, so that we really do try to make an effort to make sure that folks are aware of what's going on and have the opportunity to opt out if they want to. So if folks do get automatically enrolled, we set them up with a Roth IRA, which means that the contributions will go in post-tax. If you have questions about, the Roth IRA versus the traditional, I'm happy to answer those. We start folks off at a contribution rate of 5% with an automatic escalation feature. So they start at 5%, but then we bump up their contribution rate 1% every year until it reaches 8%. The idea there, get them started at something that's relatively comfortable, but then nudge it up a little bit every year so that they're achieving greater savings by their end of their career. And then for investment options, we wanted to make sure that everybody had a relatively appropriate investment option based on their age and time of retirement. So we built the default investment around a target retirement fund. So after 30 days, everybody's contributions will get put into a target retirement fund that's based on, again, their age and time to retirement. That way, their investments will be, again, appropriate for their age. But folks do have the opportunity to customize, so they can recharacterize to a traditional IRA if they want to. The good news for employers is that will not affect the way you do the contributions. Contributions from the employer's perspective will always be after tax, and then we work with the employee to get the tax deduction if they qualify for it. Savers obviously have complete control over the contribution rate. They can choose anything from 1% to 100% of their pay, as long as they stay below the IRS maximum, which is $6,000 per year right now, $7,000 if they're over 50. And then we have a small menu of investment options that folks can choose from if they want to, customize their investments. I won't go into great detail about, the different options, but you will have this slide to reference later, which does have a little description. The other important thing on this slide is it shows the fees for each of the accounts, and it shows the investment manager who we're working with on that particular fund. So you'll notice that the all-in total fee that employees will pay, it depends on the investment they choose, but it'll be anywhere between 0.83% and 0.95%. Again, that's per year. So we're talking about 83 cents to 95 cents for every $100 they have in their account per year. The other thing I like to point out is that those fees will automatically go down as the program grows. The contract that we have with the program administrator actually stipulates that, once we reach certain assets under management, their fees will automatically go down, which, because our goal, obviously, as a state program is to make this as affordable as possible for savers who participate, because that's the best way to get them, get them prepared for retirement. And then you'll see that 4 out of our 5 investment options are managed by State Street Global Advisors. And the last one, our sustainable ESG fund, is by Newt Investment. So this is probably the next big, most important takeaway in this presentation, is all the resources that we have available for both employers and employees. If you haven't checked it out yet, check out calsavers.com. There's tons of resources available there for both savers and employers. As far as phone customer service, we've got dedicated customer service lines for employers and employees, and an email that folks can reach out to. Client service is available 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday. And then we also offer one-on-one support. And that comes in 2 ways. We've got a dedicated onboarding team at our call center whose job it is to reach out to employers after they register to help them get up and running and get everything set up. We also have a team of in-state representatives, folks based throughout the state, including, an individual who's based in the Bakersfield area, whose job it is to assist employers one-on-one with local support. They can help employers get registered and get everything set up. They can also come out to your business and do presentations for your employees about, what this means for employees. So please do feel free to, reference this page and reach out to us if you need additional assistance. We've got multilingual support available on all of these channels. Our website's available in 10 languages. We have English and Spanish speakers available on the phone at any given time, plus access to a language line so we can get translation service for pretty much anything that you might need. And even our field team can do presentations or work with employers in English, Spanish, Cantonese, and Mandarin. So, again, please feel free to reach out and get connected with us. We want to help you through the process. So that sort of reaches the end of the presentation. My information is here up on the screen. I know that there's still a few things that we need to get to in the agenda, but I'd be happy to answer some questions if we still have time for it.
Yeah, absolutely. We have time for it. And let me bring in Nick Hill now. Nick being the president of the Black Chamber of Commerce. Nick, welcome, and glad you could join us today. While Nick's getting here, real quickly, Nick, why don't you handle the Q&A section, if you don't mind going through the Q&A box, and then I'll take the chat section. And if you have any individual questions that you want to add as well, feel free to pop those in. But real quick, I'll go through the chat. In the chat, Maureen has put in there, quite a few things. Well, hello to you, Maisie, and also a little bit about the Dream Fund. It's in the chat as well. Information about the Mono County program. Maureen has added the micro grant program in Kern County, and also the SBA COVID customer service number. And there is one question here that I'll take before you get the ones in the Q&A box, Nick, and that is, we had 5 employees last year, but as of March 1, 2022, we only have 4. And we will not be hiring. Will we still need to register?
So that's a great question. So, as I mentioned during the presentation, eligibility is based on the average number of employees that you had for the previous calendar year, and that sets up your eligibility for the current calendar year. So, without knowing the details of that particular situation or looking up your business in particular, it sounds like you would be eligible this year and would need to sign up and facilitate your employees access for those 4 employees that you do have on staff right now. And then of course next year when we get fresh data from EDD, we would evaluate that again. The good news for your employees, if your business is no longer eligible, your employees get to keep their account. You have the option to continue to facilitate employee contributions for those employees that are participating. But your employees' accounts will still be there, and so they can continue to make contributions on their own if they want to.
Jonathan, a quick follow-up to that is, and you might have mentioned this as well, how are seasonal employees, how are they factored into that?
So, because the count is based on the number of employees that are reported to EDD on that wage report, it's including seasonal employees in that average. So, say for example, you've got a business that has, even if it's 1 or 2 employees throughout the year, but then they have a quarter where they've got, 10, 20, if the number of employees that they reported during that last quarter affects their average enough, to make it 5 or more employees, they would still be eligible for the program, which again is the nice way of saying required to sign up.
One man's required is another man's eligibility. It should have been a saying like that sometime. Last question along that before I turn it over to Nick is that with that, is it based on the quarter, employees per quarter? So if I have 1 employee that turns over 5 times and for the year I have 5 employees, am I then eligible?
Let me make sure I'm understanding the math correctly. So, on that wage report that we see from EDD, on that wage report, each employer is reporting the number of employees that they had for each month. We take that number and average it out for the quarter. So if there's a quarter where there's a great deal of turnover, and they end up reporting multiple employees for that quarter, there is a possibility that could affect their annual average, and make them eligible. I think Kelly might be frozen.
Really interested in that too. Okay, Nick, please take it away. The rest of the questions.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. Jonathan, thank you for being here with us today. The first question on the list here is, are welcome kits offered in Spanish?
Yes, that's a great question. So both the electronic version and the paper version that we send out is bilingual. So it's available in English and Spanish. And then we actually have the welcome kit available in 10 languages online and over the phone. So if folks need, additional support, they just reach out to us and we can get them, the welcome kit in any one of those 10 languages that we offer.
Okay. And I have another question from Maria Munoz, and she would like to know, she said, I hired 3 employees at the end of February, and they all quit within 3 weeks. How long after hiring them do I need to offer them CalSavers?
That's another great question. So the regulations stipulate that employers have 30 days to add new employees to their roster. So, we've been working with some employers that do work in high turnover industries, and some of them have made the decision to, sort of batch employees, and, maybe it's weekly, maybe it's bi-weekly, adding their employees on some sort of cycle. Other employers are adding them as soon as they hire them, right? It's part of the process. I add them to my payroll system, I'll add them to CalSavers. But, that being said, for employees like that, if they don't make it 30 days and you haven't uploaded them into the system yet, you won't need to, because they're no longer employees that are on staff with the business.
Okay. And I have another question from an anonymous attendee, and is the 5% contribution rate on gross payroll?
That's another great question. So yes, it's 5% of the gross pay, but it's deducted from the net, because remember, this is going to be, all of the contributions are going to be post-tax for employers. That way you don't have to worry about, how it's going to affect the tax withholding for your employees. But yes, 5% of the gross pay deducted from the net.
Okay, good. That's all I have for the Q&As in the Q&A section.
Great, Nick. Thank you. And I'm going to add one more question, just because I'm an optimist by heart. And is there, say, Jonathan, a process for a growing company to graduate from CalSavers to a company plan if they grow?
Yes, absolutely. So, as the requirement says, any business who doesn't have a qualified retirement plan is required to facilitate CalSavers. So once an employer, makes that decision to sponsor a retirement plan instead, they just let us know that they've got the plan in place. And we will basically mark them exempt from the CalSavers program. Their employees get to keep their account if they want to, They can also roll over their accounts into the employees, into the new employer plan if they can. But most importantly for the employer, yes, if they end up sponsoring another plan in the future, they just cease their CalSavers participation.
There's one more question also. The one-time $35 million grant program, the California Dream Plan, is to see in entrepreneurs and small business and creation. How much longer will that program be in effect? And I guess that would be more to you, Kelly.
I would send an email soon because I think the 35 million statewide is not nearly enough money to go around personally. And I think there's going to be a lot of demand for this particular program. So if you could, and I know that there's several components of it, there's a training component. So it's going to take time. There's a training component that has to be completed. There's a consulting with a one-on-one advisor. And then there's also the business plan component before you would have the opportunity then to go through Lindustry to get the $5,000 or $10,000. So it is a kind of a lengthy process. It's not an overnight process. So I would send the email today to the CASBDC, acronym for the California SBDC at ucmerced.edu. Tell them you're interested, and they will let you know when the first training classes are set to begin.
Okay.
Okay.
That's
well,
it. That's all I have.
Well, great, Nick. Well, thank you. It's great having you back on. It's great doing a webinar with you again. It's been too doggone long.
I look forward to it.
Jonathan, same thing. It's been even longer, 3 years, but hey, great information. It's an exciting program. I've heard some good things from small business owners, which you don't regularly hear from programs that are mandated by the state of California. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Well, that's going to wrap up number 107. We'll be back for number 108 next week, next Wednesday, April 6th. So for Nick Hill and Jonathan Herrera, I'm Kelly Bearden. We'll see you next week. Everybody have a great week. Bye-bye, everyone.